Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Cash Physical Therapy Headquarters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Boggy. Jordan is out of the office today, so you're stuck with me today. We're just going to be kind of a quick hitter, and it's going to be a really impactful episode for those that are getting ready to hire their first PT, and especially if you have multiple PTs. So as you grow and scale, one of the bigger bottlenecks that you're going to experience as you bring on more physical therapists is making sure that you have a consistent sales and patient experience amongst your PTs. As you bring on different PTs, they may have different treatment styles, they may have different personalities, different communication styles. And ultimately, if you give them too much free reign on things, and you're going to have a bunch of multiple different little businesses or patient experiences that are amongst your business, right? Because everybody does it a slightly different way. So no, I'm not saying that you need to tell people how to treat by any stretch of the imagination, but during your interview process, you should get an idea of like how they treat. So it's similar to how everybody else treats and how you view patients getting the best results. What I'm talking about specifically here is actually the sales and patient experience. That is something that does need to be consistent and needs to be a well-structured, thought-out process that's carried out consistently amongst the PTs, no matter which PT it is, because you don't want to have patients having a bunch of different types of different experiences. It needs to be consistent. So how do we do that? One of the ways is eval templates. So what we have done is we have gone in and created a ProKinetics eval template for our each PT to follow. This is a subjective, objective assessment and plan, just a SOAP note. So in each of those sections, there are check boxes of questions that need to be asked, statements that need to be made, and how to go about making sure that they are going about the sales process the right way and asking the right questions. So we know that we are building up massive value versus just giving what I used to do and what a lot of PTs do is they give the PT a bunch of coaching, like you need to say this, you need to ask it this way. There's a lot to memorize. There's over 20 check boxes that the PTs need to go through and make sure that they hit. If they're trying to memorize all that, there's things that are going to be missed. Versus in the template, they can have that pulled up during their eval and making sure that they have checked that off. No, we don't want them like sitting in front of their computer and just looking at the screen. This should be like a safety net of where they are trying to do as much as they can on their own, but that laptop is there off to the side where they can check in, and they can also be doing some point of service documentation especially while they're doing the subjective, right? So no, we don't want our PTs right in front of the laptop, not paying attention to the patient. There's a balance to that, and that's something that you have to coach and teach as well. However, with this checkbox, it serves really three purposes. One, ensures that your patient and sales experience is consistent. But two, it gives them an easier and also a more well-structured process for them to follow. We've seen a lot of PTs that when they start, they're struggling. They struggle with sales. And unless you're in the room with them, it's hard to know like, hey, what did you miss? And you're kind of just susceptible to what they tell you they felt like they did well and what they felt like they didn't do well, right? And so a story of this is we had a PT that thought that they needed to work on the pitch more. And come to find out, they weren't asking a lot of the questions that they were supposed to be asking. Like they weren't asking value add questions. Like, for example, you always ask, what is the number one thing that you want to get out of this first session, right? He wasn't asking that. And if you don't ask that, you're kind of shooting blind. I'm like, what do they feel is valuable there? Like a lot of times people just want answers. And he thought what was valuable was just giving them as much exercise as possible. No, a lot of these patients just want answers and clarity of what's going on. But because he wasn't asking that question, he wasn't building that rapport with the patient. And instead he was just giving them a bunch of exercise, which they really, it helps. Obviously, we know that helps, but we overvalue that as PTs. And that's not super valuable for the patient, especially during the first visit when they're scared. They don't know what's going on with their body and they want answers. And all you did is actually just give them exercises with no clarity of what's going on. But that's the reason that we didn't know that was going on is because we were ultimately leaving up to him on what he felt was a bottleneck. He's not the sales expert. You are. The clinic director is. And so that's where this is where this really comes into play a factor. Obviously, yes, you do want to be shadowing your PTs on evaluations when possible, but at the same time, it's not a great experience for your PTs to feel like they're being watched over or micromanaged. And also you got to get the schedules to align too. So we do still observe our PTs evaluations, but it's few and far between. And lots of the time it's not really needed. And so this gives them a easier and structured process to follow. And it allows for better self-reflection. They can go in and visually see, hey, what am I consistently hitting and doing well? And what are checkboxes that I'm missing? They don't have to come to you for insight into why they're struggling. They can do self-assessments on themselves now, right? And they can grade themselves. Third point here is what we kind of talked about a little bit already. It's just easier to coach and figure out the bottlenecks. Now, so my clinic director does a lot of our sales coaching with PTs that are struggling. I'll jump in occasionally as well. But now she can go ahead and pull up each evaluation template and documentation and figure out, hey, what is Dr. So-and-so consistently hitting? Yeah, he's consistently, doing great with building rapport and asking, doing this objective and asking what they want to get out of today's session. What are you most concerned about? Yada, yada. But he might be struggling with mapping out, like, why are they having this issue and explaining this to people about what's going on, why they need X amount of sessions and giving that clarity. And then also they might be not consistently telling patients what they can expect for next session, and mapping out a clear roadmap. So, or vice versa. So now we can have it makes the coaching and the role playing much more effective. So if we know somebody's struggling with X topic or X checkbox, we know that we need to do a role playing on it versus barking up the wrong tree and doing role playing on something that they already do well. So if I could go back and do this from the get-go, I absolutely would. This is sometimes that was a bottleneck up until we started doing this, especially as we grew and scaled. Their patient experience was just slightly off from each PT to PT. And it's okay to have slight variance, but when it comes to the sales process, you want to have a consistent process across the board. Make sure that your conversion rates are consistent as well, because that's ultimately what's one of the biggest bottlenecks to the scale is that initial evaluation conversion rate and plan of care, number of visits per plan of care. And so if you have an experience that is variable across PTs, you're gonna have a variable conversion rate amongst those PTs and also variable average visit per plan of care because the buy-in's not the same as well. So highly recommend you guys do this, whether it's PT Everywhere, whether it's JNAP, whatever your documentation system or EMR is. Highly recommend that you guys get a template of a checklist of all the things that need to happen from a sales perspective, not necessarily like a treatment or eval. Like, we don't tell our PTs how to do evals. They're experts. We hired them for a reason, but from a sales perspective, they are not experts. We don't get taught this in school, and it's your duty to make sure that you give them structure. And it's also going to help improve their onboarding experience as a PT and make it less frustrating, because this is something new to them. Sales is something that's completely new to them and foreign to them. And it's easy to get frustrated. It's easy for people's ego and confidence to start taking hit. They start hearing no too much. And so this is a great way to decrease the likelihood of them hearing no's and PTs getting in their own heads about their capabilities and their confidence, because they're not hearing no as much, because they have a well-structured process to follow and one that has historically worked very well. So hopefully you guys found this helpful. It was kind of a quick hitter, but it's a very, very impactful one. Just as always, don't just listen to these podcasts. Make sure that you implement. And so there's one very actionable item in here, and that is eval templates and building those out for your team as they onboard. So I will see you guys next week.